Subnautica does not suck. But amidst a sea of mediocre survival horror games, why doesn't it? On the surface, Subnautica has a lot in common with the quickly becoming oversaturated mess of survival horror games. But unlike those games, it's really good. At a glance, it has a typical eat and drink to survive and acquire resources to build better shit than repeat gameplay loop. But it implements and lives around these loops exceptionally well. From actually having a story to vertical exploration, the immense feeling of solitude in an atmosphere of intense but not overbearing terror, Subnautica takes well-known tropes of the genre and flips them on their head. I mentioned it's a survival game, but that's only if you want it to be. In fact, the first iteration of the game didn't include hunger and thirst at all. It wasn't even considered until fans wrote the dev team, all but demanding its implementation. Now it's part of 4 optional gameplay modes that range from an Iron Man-style game that doesn't respawn the player after death, to a carefree creation mode that unlocks blueprints from the start and doesn't punish the players that just want to build and explore. Most of this is going to be based on the survival mode, because that's what I wanted to play. Once you get past the initial, oh shit, I have to find a reliable source of food and drinkable water phase, the game begins to hint towards its story through radio calls and distress beacons. These gradually lure the player deeper and deeper under the waters of planet 4546b, until you realize you can't just hold your breath to get there anymore. Instead of simply locking things behind doors and saying go find a key, the progression system in this game is almost entirely focused on figuring out how to dive to the extreme depths the game asks you to explore. In these darker, more treacherous areas of the sea, you'll find wide underwater forests, tight volcanic cave systems, chunks of your wrecked spaceship the Aurora, and other crashed escape pods. And each of these biomes introduces the player to new flora, fauna, and geological treasures to discover and utilize. As you get better at attaining these depths, you find more caches of resources, creating a natural microeconomy within the game. As you descend, like Nemo aboard the Nautilus, you'll also find that in the darker trenches and caves lurk the real survivors of this planet. Monsters larger than any submarine, fish that lure you in with telepathy, waiting to strike when your guard is down, eel-like glowing ghosts of the sea, and strange bionic race of hunter-killers that I'd rather leave the details out, in case you haven't played the game yet. Whether your fear is hearkened from great unknown expanses, claustrophobic cave networks, or being chased by monstrous creatures that make Gyarados look like a minnow, this world will instill a sense of dread unlike any game I've played in a long, long time. The arsenal you eventually create for yourself also lends to the sense of fear and will have you rely more on the flight than fight response. The guns and torpedoes are all non-lethal. They simply distract or restrain creatures long enough for you to make your escape. In fact, the only lethal weapon you can make is a simple knife. Although with proper upgrades, this thing can make even George Foreman jealous. This decision didn't only come from a choice to create greater tension when you finally meet that giant, hungry creature you know is in the cave you so desperately want to explore. In an interview with Rock Paper Shotgun, designer and programmer Charlie Cleveland asked himself in the wake of yet another school shooting, why are we adding to this culture of violence? And challenged himself and his team to focus on non-lethal alternatives. I, for one, enjoy the dynamic this has provided, instead of the game ending in one more power fantasy. Imagine you're just swimming around, looking for a little bit of copper or some salt, and you hear the yell of the Leviathan and see its shadowy profile in the distance. I just wouldn't feel the same if I knew I could Doom-style take a rocket launcher to it and solve the problem. Although, that does sound like a really cool game. But it's not Subnautica. Speaking of not Subnautica, I was thinking about how cool it would be to explore and build in Subnautica's oceans with my friends. It made sense to me when I thought about the scale of the vehicles like the Cyclops and immensity of the game's world. But I realized that would irreparably detract from a major theme of the game: solitude. When you wake up in your crashed escape pod, you realize you are alone. As you investigate more and more of the abandoned emergency beacons and escape pods, the thought solidifies that you are alone. There wouldn't be a way the developers could have added co-op and kept this theme alive, and I respect their decision there. In fact, the only reason I enjoy other games of the genre, like your Daisies and your Rusts, is because I can hang out with friends and interact with strangers to tell our own unique and wild stories. So the fact that Subnautica can draw me in the way it does, without even including this feature, speaks volumes to how good it really is. I'm definitely not saying the game is perfect. Coming from a small development team, there are some rough edges when it comes to base building and texture clipping and pop-in. The VR support is still lackluster and hopefully won't be abandoned, and at certain points, the grind is real. You will spend a long time doing this. But the vision the developers had still shines through the murky waters to unveil a beautiful and mysterious world, unlike any I've seen, with an intriguing story that keeps pushing you to go another fathom deeper. And it's only $25 on Steam. Seriously, there's no reason not to dip your toes in and check it out. Are there any other games that scratch that itch of wonder and awe on you? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching. Was that enough ocean puns?